what do victims of crime really want? Does the author of the harm have real remorse? Does he or she understand what was taken from the receiver of the harm? Restorative justice is happening everywhere in different degrees. It's happening in Pennsylvania for juveniles, Washington, D.C. for 18-year-olds and under, for all offenses, including sex crimes. And we hear it oftentimes that hurt people hurt people. And while that may not be an excuse, and I'm not suggesting it should be, it's something we have to really acknowledge the victim in everyone in order to have healthier, sustainable, safer communities. My name is Cindy Prizio. I'm Executive Director of One Standard of Justice. We believe that any sexual offense is one too many. We believe that most of our laws and policies are not validated by science, are extraordinarily expensive, do little to prevent sexual harm, and once harm has been done, do little to bring closure for both survivor victims and offenders, and instead create more harm for everyone, including their families and our communities. We believe in the education and practice of victim-centered restorative justice offered as an alternative to the adversarial criminal justice system for all offenses, especially violent crime.
I do a lot of work in the criminal justice arena, and the work that we have done around this issue has really been impacted seriously and negatively by a lack of information. For way too long, emotion has dominated the subject and the response to it. And while there's a lot of emotion around the subject, there's actually a lot of information around the matter. We just tend to ignore it. And when you have people who are in the business of creating policy and they don't have the appropriate information or they have misinformation, then what we create are systems to deal with the problem that do not deal with the problem, that mask the problem, that make the problem harder to deal with. These offenses that we're talking about are some of the most intimate, and so people's emotions are deeply involved. But as policymakers and people who are interested, we have to bring information to bear so that we can create the most just system possible. When we think about an evidence-based approach, we're really dealing with reducing risk. We're really dealing with improving public safety. And while it may feel good to operate in a punitive way for some people, that doesn't get it.
How do we also address the harm? What do we need to learn? What are the questions that we can ask? My name is Dr. Danielle Cooper. I bring you greetings from the University of New Haven, where I'm an associate professor of criminal justice, and I also serve as the director of research at the Talley Justice Institute. There is work to be done here. That work falls into a lot of places and spaces where we share values. We share values around racial and ethnic disparity. We share values around social justice and restorative justice. We want connections. We want knowledge. We want to reduce misinformation. How do I get to speak to you about what you did to me, or speak about what was done to me and bring it to a close?
My sexual assault case was the first in North America to conclude with restorative justice through the courts. My work has been featured through Forbes, BuzzFeed, Mel Robbins' show, HuffPost, and more. In 2016, I experienced rape from a stranger. I didn't want nothing, and so I did choose to report. I had a huge need for my assailant to humanize me, but I also did have that need to humanize him. I was having nightmares about him. I was having flashbacks, and he was like this big, scary entity to me. I was really in awe of all of us for being able to take something so horrible and then to sit down and actually find closure. I had only met my assailant during the assault, that one time in preliminary trial, and then at the circle. I knew all about what I wanted to know about, and I didn't know about what I didn't want to know about. And to me, that's such a reflection of a survivor-centered process. This trauma where my mouth was covered and my no was not heard, for the first time since that, people are actually listening to what I want, and they're actually caring about what my needs are in order to heal and to be okay. So every sort of non-consensual and disempowering experience I had with the punitive system, it was totally different in restorative justice. It's a very disheartening perspective to just kind of accept that, well, this person experienced trauma, they're going to be like damaged for the rest of their lives. And this is another reason that I share a lot about this. And I do the work that I do with women like directly is because I don't subscribe to that narrative. Like my life is way too precious for me to feel damaged for the rest of my life. I feel more empowered than I did before the assaults happened. My needs as a survivor matter. They matter enough for me to ask for them, to advocate for them, to tell the prosecutor that this is what I want, even though it's not how the system typically handles it. We can't use something like the Me Too movement to justify silencing survivors' voices and acting on our behalfs without our consent. Something I actually got to ask him in the circle was, what happened between the time a baby was born and a perpetrator was made? If trauma can be the catalyst that changes so many survivors' lives, can it potentially be a catalyst for perpetrators to change their lives as well? Survivors are asked, do I want to take the punitive path and try to send this person to prison, who might be their father, their best friend, their teacher, whatever? Or do I want nothing at all? And this is why so few people report, because it doesn't feel safe for us. We're like, do I want to rip my family apart? Do I want to, sit on the stand and be faced with all these invasive questions? Do I want to fight to send this person to prison? If those are our only options, then that's leaving a lot of people in situations of silence and further abuse.
The victims aren't a monolith. Perpetrators aren't a monolith. There are various shades of gray. And many of my colleagues see these things as black and white. And so the more work we can do to engage them, to get them to a place where they understand it isn't black and white, the better off and the safer we all will be.
What I also see in terms of what we need for the future is this continued and shared discussion so that we can build language. Sometimes you and I operate in this justice, world, but whether it's because people have a narrow framing where they feel like it only operates in the justice world, no restorative practices exist outside of that, whether they have a mindset of only some type of harm can be addressed by this, or only some type of offense can be addressed by this. We are seeing that our young kids are experiencing this in their classrooms as an opportunity for very simple behavior problems. And we're seeing this also being used for even more extreme types of offenses.
This is an emotionally laden subject. We hope that by providing baseline of sound research, we can create a chance for dialogue among the many people directly impacted, both professionally and personally, by sexual offending. Restorative justice focuses on who was hurt and how do we make the person whole or repair the harm done. Restorative justice engages the primary stakeholders together with their family members and the community. There is wide acceptance that our mass incarceration strategies of the past have inflicted massive costs on not only our state, but our families and communities, and that reform is much needed. The field of sexual offending is no different. We believe a research-driven approach to offending can bring enormous monetary and non-monetary savings while allowing more funding for upstream education efforts and lowering rates of offending. Any sexual offense is one too many. We believe communities are safer with rational laws and with a focus on prevention of sexual harm. Change is possible.